I press the button and we are live, Tip.
Hi, hello, Elena. Hello, everyone in the audience. It's great to, well, we can't see you, but we're assuming you're there. Right, so I'm in Cambridge and Elena in England, and Elena, you're in Berlin?
Berlin. I wish I was in England as well. I really like England,
Well,
but
nice
in
to be
Berlin.
in the same room. But so if there's anyone out there, you can tell us where you are. We're going to be talking about how to build a movie recommendation system using JavaScript and machine learning. We'll get into exactly what we mean with that in a moment. I'm just going to give another couple of minutes for any late joiners because I'm the sort of person who turns up 5 minutes early, and my wife gets upset at that because she wants to be there on time. And I know normal people are there 5 or 10 minutes late because they've got other things to do with their lives.
That's a rule. That's a rule. I don't know if it's for better or for worse, but yeah, I think I also try to be on time always. But
I think sniping at people if they're a little bit late is unfair when they've got other things to do in their lives.
And to be honest, the transportation, like I don't know, like I'm also curious from where we have our viewers. Tell us from where you are. But at least in Berlin, we are having so many strikes lately, and it's not like the traffic was on time before, like the public transport was on time before. But right now, it's like it just doesn't go at all. So we had like yesterday another strike, like trains didn't work, and of course you're late everywhere or you're skipping stuff. So.
We've had much the same over here, although I'm lucky I have a couple of meters to walk across the garden to get to my office. So it makes it a lot simpler. Right, let us move to the topic of this workshop. So we're going to talk about how to find a movie by typing in a question of what you're interested in. Now, if you're used to streaming services, of course, what they do is they sneak they watch what you're doing, and they notice the movies you're watching and the movies you like and don't like, and they gradually build up a profile of you, and so they can give recommendations based on the past history of what you've watched. We of course don't have access to that. That would be very creepy if we'd been following workshop participants around for weeks to see what movies they liked. But what we can do is trying to give the approach where you type in a question of what you would like to watch, perhaps Fat Cat, and it says, hey, Garfield the movie is a good idea. And so you type in a question and it goes away and finds something that fits the criteria. The traditional way to do that would, of course, be to gather a list of all of your movie information into a database and then do a textual search. The trouble with that is that if I want, for instance, to find a movie about cute puppies, and I type in cute puppies, and nowhere in the description does it mention cute puppies, but it does mention dogs and growing up as a dog and being charming, I would like to find that movie, but a straight textual search won't. So our idea is to use semantic search. We want to look for things by their meaning. And what we have gained the ability to do with machine learning these days, using vector search, is to categorize pieces of text by what they mean. And then we can compare things by how close they are in the idea of what they're about. This is one of the things where until, a year or two back, I was very skeptical about machine learning. And then this sort of thing became along, and very rapidly became obvious to me that this could give a better search experience if you use it carefully. So vector search is based on the idea that we can take an idea and we can assign numbers to it to describe it according to its characteristics. So if we take a simple two-dimensional grid and we say, take a pretty dress and place it at 0, 0, if we then take a pair of dress shoes, they might go very close to that in our vector. I don't know what the axes of this are, but it's some sort of closeness here. If we add a pair of sporty shoes, they'll be rather further away from the party dress, but they'll still be close to the dress shoes. If we add some other things, they'll be further away. You can see the electric guitar down in the corner is very far away from all the other things. The two animals are quite close to each other. And that enables us to create the XY vectors that describe where these things are. So the dress and the shoes we can see are quite close together. The guitar at 5, 5 is a long way from 0, 0. And vector search is basically the art of saying we will encode information using an array, a vector of numbers, which we generate with using machine learning. And then we will be able to use mathematics to find out which things are close to each other, which of those vectors are similar enough to each other. Now, typically, we need to use something like 512, some other large number of dimensions instead of just the 2 that we're using here. So that's why we need the machine learning tools to actually do this generation for us, because if you try to do it by hand, it would take you forever and you'd probably go mad very quickly. So what we're going to do today is we'll take a movie data set, which has descriptions of lots of movies and their titles and who was in them and things. We'll take those descriptions and we'll push them through TensorFlow, which is a machine learning package for encoding things like sentences. It has a universal sentence encoder, which is able to understand sentences in general and extract their meaning in a way that we can compare. Well, that will give us a vector in this 512 dimension space for each description. We can then store those vectors in a convenient database. We'll use Postgres and its pgvector extension, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on. We'll then take a search phrase, as we saw earlier. We'll push that through TensorFlow again, through the same encoder. That gives us a single one of these 512 vectors, and we can then compare it with our database and find out if we've got the same answer, to find the most similar values from the database. And to begin with, we're going to do a very simple command line interface for this, which isn't very pretty to use. But by the end of the session, we'll have an app that looks like the demo at the beginning. Now, I have to warn you, the slides were produced using someone using dark mode, and I use light mode, so it won't look quite the same, but the intent is identical.
I'm actually on that note. I'm really curious if someone will put in the comments who prefers dark mode, who is the dark mode group of people, and who is the light mode, because I have my strong preference, but I will not share till other people.
I have a preference as well due to history. So when I was first programming, all terminals were dark mode, and they either had bright green or bright yellow or bright white luminous sort of characters on them. You had no choice. So I kind of reacted against that, I think, in later life, and now I much prefer light mode. But it's not because light mode or dark mode is better. I think there's a lot of evidence to show that they work for different people in different ways, and depending on the ambient lighting as well. But yes, I'd be very interested to know who likes what. So we're going to use a variety of technologies today. We're going to use Postgres as the database to store stuff in. It's an excellent general purpose database. It's rarely the wrong place to start if you want a database and don't know what to do. And pgvector. Now, Postgres has had an array data type for a very long time. pgvector is then a plugin, an extension for Postgres that adds the ability to compare those arrays, to treat those arrays as these embedded vectors, these machine learning vectors, to do your how close are these concepts comparisons. As we mentioned, we're going to use TensorFlow to create the vector embeddings. Now, this is a public package that you can use. We're going to use Node.js and Next.js as our programming language choice. That means that we can create the app and all of the rest of the code in one thing. If we were, for instance, using Python, it would be a lot harder to create our app without going to a lot more plumbing that we're not very interested in. Because we need to start up Postgres somewhere, and because we work for Aiven, we're going to use the free Postgres offering that Aiven gives you. So we'll explain a little bit later on how to log into Aiven for the first time and get that access to that free database. And in order to make everything simple, we're going to work in the browser. And because we're working with the GitHub repository, we can use GitHub code spaces to give you VS Code in the browser. And that's what we'll be using for the demonstration. So the workshop is in 3 parts. We're going to set up the working environment. We're then going to go through that core functionality that gives us that gets everything set up. At the end of that, we'll be populating the database, which will take a little while. So we'll take a 10-minute break in the middle, about an hour mark, to let people go and just relax from the workshop for a moment while everything's finishing, and then we'll come back and create the visual interface so we get a full stack web application that lets you do the search. I haven't forgotten anything, have I, Elena? So the reason for me looking sideways here is the picture where you all are is over there, and I can just see the actual, my laptop is in front of me, so this is a bit confusing for me.
I think you covered everything, tips, so I think
Right.
everything is there.
So if you care to follow this link, this will take you to the GitHub repository.
I will copy this link.
Also going into the chat.
Yes, copy it.
And I will now, so you should now end up here. I trust everyone can see that, yes?
At least I can see it.
Right.
If you also can make it, I'm not sure. I think it's actually a good font. You can actually use it a bit.
I can make that a bit bigger.
Yeah,
now,
I think it's
so if you want to play with this later on, this repository is a public repository. It's not going anywhere. And we are actually going to be following the instructions in this README. So if you come back later and are watching the video, or even not, you could go through everything without us being present if you want. Now, because I'm going to be following the README, there's all this stuff over to the right-hand side that I'm not very interested in. I'm just going to go straight to the README here and look at the preview of the README in a slightly friendlier manner. So the very first thing we're going to do is to click on this link here and go and register with Aiven so we can create our Postgres service. So let me just go there. So this is where I'm going, and I'm going to click on, I'm going to hit return on that link. Now we've set this up so that we're going to be using our free Postgres offering. We have free Postgres, MySQL, and Redis offerings. But if you wanted to play with any of our other services, we do have a normal thing that for a trial you get a $300 credit. By using this login, you'll actually get an extra $100 and get a $400 credit. So if you wanted to play with Kafka, for instance, or any of our, or OpenSearch or something else, that gets you in. So to log in, I'm going to use the continue with email for reasons to do with the fact that I actually have a proper login as an Aiven employee. If I go in with email, I can create a separate person so that it's a new person and is more like what you'll experience. Feel free to log in with Google, Microsoft, or with GitHub itself if that's easier. So if I say continue with email, it wants me to give my name, which I should know. But I'm going to call it Kibs for demo. It wants an email address. And it's March the 13th. The reason for doing this weird email address with a plus sign is so that I make sure that I don't get the same user ID that I use for work. Over here, I've got a cunningly nice password saved, which I don't want you to see. So I can now paste that in. And you don't get to see it. And then I hit register with email. If I did that, it's late. Second time lucky. So that's now sent me an email. And over on the screen, you can't see. I've got my email reader. And that email has just arrived. It says, hi, Tibbs for demo. Welcome to Aiven. And it asked me to activate my account. So if I copy that link, and come over here and paste it, I can activate my account. And now it will take me to the console. And then it's going to ask me some questions. Please feel free to answer these questions as you wish. I think for a workshop, it's reasonable to say we're doing personal stuff. It's got the name I gave earlier. It wants a project name. It's always nice, I think, to give it a project name that's more useful than the default with numbers. I can't spell recommender. Oh, yes, I can. It will guess your country. If you're in the US, it will also guess your state. I'm already signed up to our newsletter, so I'm not going to sign up again, but please feel free to sign up to the newsletter. It's actually quite nice, and we don't send too many things, but there's no requirement for you to do so. If I now click done, then that will take me to our console. I don't know if I need to pause a moment for people to catch up.
Yes, so people, the viewers, please tell us if we are going too fast, or so that we also feel we kind of can imagine all of your friendly faces, but sometimes they are difficult to predict if you need more time or less time, or you are like super fast. So whatever you're doing, just also keep us know.
Because I've done this a lot of times, it's terribly easy for me to go fast, and or to hit the right thing where if I didn't know what I was doing, I'd hit the wrong thing and end up in a strange place and have to work my way back out again.
Yeah, I think the registration generally is pretty friendly. I also appreciate that we don't have to enter any like credit cards or anything else.
Oh my goodness, yes.
It's like very fast.
Right, so I'm going to now choose Postgres here. As I said, we've got Postgres, MySQL, and Redis all have free tiers where you can have a database that doesn't cost you anything and hopefully will be around for a good long time. That's because we want people to be able to use our services in a friendly way. Our other services, Kafka, OpenSearch, Cassandra, and so on, ClickHouse, are all fascinating, and Apache Flink, of course, are all fascinating, but they are a bit more resource intensive, so we don't have a free tier for them. So I'm going to choose Postgres.
But there is a free trial, so like also possibility
so
to use
here for Postgres, on the left there's a free plan. Now I get confused by this terminology because the trial doesn't cost you money, you get credits, but the free plan doesn't cost you nothing. And the reassuring thing is at the right there, you can see that it says $0. So it's confirmed that this is not going to cost us anything. It's pre-selected DigitalOcean as the people providing this. You then get the choice to choose your service region, choose something close to you. Normally, I'm in Cambridge, which is just north of London, so it's natural for me to choose the London one. It doesn't really make much difference unless you're worrying about latency. If you were on one of the paid tiers, some of them are more expensive than others, but for free plan, you only get one choice of a service plan. If you're on the paid tiers, you can choose how big your service is and so on. Again, it suggests a name with numbers. It's much nicer to have an actual name that means something, not least because if you were doing paid services, you'd have more than one. You're only allowed one free service of each type, I'm afraid. So you can only have one free Postgres. But and then we create the free service. I made that sound so bad. You're only allowed one free Postgres. We allow you to have a free Postgres, and it's yours to do with as you wish. Now, this takes you into this connection details page. If you're the sort of person who's doing complicated stuff, then this wizard is for you. But in general, for most people and for us, we just want to select. Excuse me, I've just got to stop my phone from ringing.
No worries.
It's okay.
Is it the Queen who is calling?
We've just got to choose the go to service overview here at the left. I'm hoping that won't come back. It's always spam at this time of day. So, and this takes us to the overview page for this service. So here we can see, if we look at the top, here's the name of my thing. It's running Postgres 15, which it chose. It's telling me when the Postgres will reach its end of life, and Aiven will then upgrade it for me before then. It says rebuilding, and you can see this one node, that little thing is blue and is flashing. That means it's rebuilding the node. It's not ready yet. It'll take a little while, and then that will go green, and it will say running. So whilst that's going, we can go back to the GitHub page and do the next thing. So that's back to here. So we've done what this little video would describe, which is to set things up. Now we're going to open up GitHub code spaces, and the easiest way to do that is just to click on the button. Because I'm trying to show the README and the code space, I'm just going to be cruel to you and make this narrower. And then I'm going to open code spaces in a new window next to it. And we'll arrange those to try and make both visible. So it opens a new code space. It warns me that I'm paying for this. You can go and see what you're charged, but code spaces are essentially free until you're using quite a lot of stuff. We want the main branch. It's picked my region for me, machine type, everything is okay. So I click create code space, and it will create me a visual code environment for that repository. And I will make that a little bit bigger. Elena, is that okay? Is that big enough?
I think it's okay. Yes, I
can
think
change
it's
again
big
in a
enough for
moment.
me. However, again, to our viewers, depending on which kind of screen you have, tell us if you want to have bigger, because like if you will zoom in tips, then we also will not have so much space. So it's a balance. So I would say for me it is okay, but maybe for someone it's not. So like if let's
That's
see
true,
if there's
yes.
the comments, if we see something.
Yes, I'm particularly bad at this because I use a very small font on my display normally, and people will look over my shoulder and go, well, that's too small. Right, so one thing before I start, let's just get rid of that. We have a terminal at the bottom here, and it's got this lovely long prompt here, which is basically showing the entire directory string for how to get there. That's a little bit long, and one thing I've saved over here is the magic bash command to make that a little bit shorter. So let's see if I can paste that in. That wants me to allow, which I do. So that's setting PS1 to something else, and PS1 is the prompt string. So that's not so helpful at the moment because, as you can see, we're in a directory with a very long name, but we'll sort that out in a moment.
This is true magic.
So
I didn't know it's possible to modify.
this is the advantage of being a programmer who's been doing command line stuff for a long time, and Bash is where I've lived too much of my life.
For the
I had to look it
audience,
up.
for the
I
audience,
did
this
have
is
to look at
actually
the
where
screen.
I'm getting this ideas from tips and some improvements how to do stuff with command line. Where I'm like, yeah, you need to move the stuff from here over there, and tip is like, but you can do the command line everything.
But on the other hand, this goes both ways because Elena goes, "Did you know you can do this?" I go, "Oh." So I think this is just that one has competency in the field you're used to, and you learn things over time. And I was very irritated by the fact that I was making this window narrow and I couldn't see things. So the very first thing we're going to do, now the reason I've got this window here, if I could stay over here, you can see I've got the same text. But if I go down, unfortunately, if I hover over here, I don't get the copy thing. And trying to do this sort of game where I copy stuff by is a right pain. Whereas over here, I've got the same stuff, but I copy, and I'm going to cd, hopefully this will work, into a subdirectory. So I'm now in a subdirectory, and this is why it's worth shortening that prompt, because we're now in part1.core. Part1 core. So if we come back here to our directory browser, we can see we've got part1 core, and it has various files in it. So we're happy now. So that's our editing environment set up. We were talking about this database of movie plots, and this comes from this thing. This comes from Kaggle. And Kaggle is a wonderful repository of all sorts of data, which is free for use. And this is a scraping of movie summaries from Wikipedia at a particular date. I'm not sure what year it was, but it's a while ago, so it doesn't have very recent movies. But it has the...
No
Sorry?
one should be afraid to see some spoilers of the
That's
movies,
true.
because
That's a
the
good point,
plot
yes.
has information about the movies. So if you haven't seen some of the movies and you see the title and you want to see them and you don't like spoilers, probably this data set is a bit dangerous. But again, I think it's a great data set. It's like the movies are from 1900 here, like they are super old. There are like some really cool movies you can.
It keeps coming out with Garfield the movie more often than I'm happy with, but as well, but never mind. So the main things here we were interested in here, right? It's got a movie title as a field. It's got the plot, which is a long form description, as it may contain spoilers, which is what we're actually interested in searching on, because we want to search on the entire description of what the movie was about. And as I said, if we did a straight search by words, we might be able to say, well, I'll look for dog, and I'll look for dogs, and I'll look for doggies and doggos. But if we were then looking for puppies, we might not have thought that dog included puppy, and we would miss things. So traditional search approaches need a lot of preparation to be able to do free text search in a way that's actually useful. You begin to have synonyms and all sorts of things defined, and how the English language actually works. The machine learning thing takes care of that for us. So let's go back to, and this exposes all of that as a JSON structure. And if you look over here, movieplots.json, here, I'm not, actually if I open it, it says it's too big. There's a whole 79 megabytes of it. That is all of the movie data. I am not going to try and expand it as a JSON file with each of those elements as a field in it. So that's in the repository already, so you don't have to download anything from Kaggle. Now we're over here, let's have a look at package.json. So package.json is saying what packages we need to be able to run our JavaScript program. And unsurprisingly, the list starts with the TensorFlow universal sentence encoder, which is there as a Java package. TFJS node is then for the TensorFlow JavaScript interface. .env will come into in a minute, but it means that we can store our environment variables in a file. We don't want to store them in GitHub. We want to put them in a file that will load at runtime. Make runnable, we'll see in a minute, makes it easy to run node and then a command name to run a function. PG gives us the basic Postgres access, and PG promises gives us some extra capabilities to do things with Postgres, and we're going to use the ability to load bulk data in chunks later on, which this provides. So we want all of those. So in the normal way, we're going to do npm install. So we copy this command and run it here. Remember, we should be in part 1-core, so we change directory to there. Whoops.
And for the viewers, if you see any errors, then if you see any errors, post them and tell us so that we can help, because we kind of know ins and outs of this workshop. So we will be able
to. I'm not quite sure why it's doing this.
Ooh, signing up. Okay, that stuff. Okay, tips. I don't know. Authentication.
I'm going to do what it says. I've never seen this before.
Yeah, me neither.
I also accidentally added npm install to the top of there. This shows it's a real live workshop. I'm going to hit return on this to see what happens. Maybe no, this time it's working. I must have accidentally clicked something.
I'm not sure what is actually clicked then. So because you passed, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
I think when I pasted npm install into the source file by accident, I then maybe clicked something else by accident and made it do something. I'm going to cross my fingers on that. I've never seen this happen before, and I've been through this several times now, and I know you have, Elena, as well.
Yeah,
so that's installed the various things for us from npm. So we should now be ready to run, and we can run this command. So we've got encode single movie plot.js. If we come over here and look at our files, we've got this file here. And what that's doing is it's a short file. It's saying pull in that TensorFlow node and the universal sentence encoder, read in movieplots.json as a data structure, and then find the first plots in there, the first summary in there, and calculate the embedding. Machine learning people use embeddings and vectors to mean the same thing. As I understand it, embedding is a technical term that means stored on a computer in this context, and vector means array in this context. So it's basically they get used interchangeably. So we're calculating the embedding, we're calculating the vector for the plot out of that entry out of the first entry in the JSON file, and then we're logging it. So if we copy this command, I'm very carefully making sure I'm talking to this terminal when I say run, and we run it. Then it loads the TensorFlow package, which takes a moment, and then it returns this very long array of 512 floating point numbers. It's actually an array in an array, because you might get more than one back if you do certain things. But that's our answer. So that's proven that we can take one of the plots out of the JSON file and we can calculate the embedding for it. So we now need to set up the ability to communicate to our Postgres. We need to give our application the information it needs. To do that, we need two things. We've got here a file called .env_example, and the .env package in JavaScript will read a .env file, strangely enough. So the simplest thing, the instructions on the left say copy this, but it's actually a heck of a lot easier to just rename it at the moment here. This file, GitHub, has in the GitHub repository has been told to ignore files called .env. So we have set this repository up so it's not possible for me to accidentally check in a .env file. And the important thing about that is we're going to put in, well, we're going to put a password in here for a start. And we don't want that to go into our GitHub repository. Actually, our Aiven GitHub repositories are also set up with a thing GitHub will let you do, which is to check that things like passwords don't actually get checked in. So it actually keeps an eye out for things look like secrets that you shouldn't check in. But let's not take that risk. So the first thing we want to do is we need to go back to our service page for our Postgres. And if we scroll down a bit, we can see we've got the long URL to take us there, but we've also got the database name, the host name, the port, and the user and password. And we can copy those from over here. So let's go back here. The first thing we need is the name, the username, which I know is Aiven and admin, but I'm going to copy it anyway. Now, if I'm lucky, then paste will work from the keyboard. It did. When I was running yesterday, for some reason, paste from the keyboard has decided not to stop working. I was having to use the menu to do it. We now want the password, which I'm going to copy, and I'm going to paste. And I would like to reassure you that this password will not work after this workshop because I will have deleted the database. So I don't think in the short period of the workshop that this is going to be a problem. We want the host, which is this string. Now, obviously for you, these values will all be different. That's very long. But if we scroll back to the side, we can see it looks plausible. And then we want the port, which again, we come back over here. The other reason I'm not so worried about the password is this is actually only half of the, so that's populated that, that's good. For my satisfaction, I'm going to come out of the other thing we need is we need the certificate file, which again proves that we're allowed to write to Postgres and things. So if we go back to our service here, we can see it says CA certificate and it's got a download button here. So if I click on that, that will download me ca.pem. It puts it in my downloads folder, which you can't see. And I'm going to take it and drag it over here into this same directory. And there it is, it's appeared there. So that's now set up, and it's a file that says begin certificate in the normal way and has stuff in it. That's everything we need to authorize ourselves to the Postgres database. So I'm going to wait a moment there. If people are able to tell me tell us if they've actually caught up with us, because that can take a little while to do, or if you need to reshow you any of those steps.
Yes, please tell us if you're keeping up, or if you see any issues, any errors, or just have any questions. So that would be nice.
Yes, I apologize. I'm ignoring the chat because I have to turn my head to see the chat.
I'm keeping an eye on the chat. So no
I have
worries.
a nice big screen that I normally work on, but if I try and put all of this on the big screen, it makes showing really hard, and because I'm having to use more than one window.
That's interesting. I usually actually pretty happy using my laptop screen only for everything, but I do have a lot of like gestures and kind of moving and also arranging the screens. There was even like some application I was using where you use a keyboard to command, and then there are just like the screens, like for example, 4 screens on this. Like it's kind of like a lot of variety. So when I have a big screen, sometimes it's like very unusual. So I think it's all again.
I'm one of those weird people who has 10 virtual screens on over 2 actual screens. So that thing where I'm moving between the different views on this laptop that I've been doing is very natural to me. And I think drive other people up the wall if they're watching me do it.
No, I think it's habits, and like it's like also a habit. Like I think the majority of us have a lot of tabs on our.
Oh, we all have ways we learn to do things, and they're always different than everyone else. And the worst thing you can do to someone is say, no, here's a more efficient way, when actually they don't really care. Because it's more efficient is what you do without thinking rather than.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see any comments in the chat, so if you want, you can continue.
Right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the pgcommands.js file, which is here. And let's get rid of the terminal a little bit. I don't know why I keep doing that. I can do that. I learned this yesterday. So this is a very useful file with some commands in it. So you can see it's requiring FS, which allows you to talk to the file system. It's getting in the configuration from our .env file and making that available as process.env.something. And it's requiring the Postgres module. So this is our configuration that we just created in that .env file. It's extracting the 4 values we had here. And it's also reading in that ca.pem file and turning it into a string. And that's our SSL connection, our secure connection. Once that environment is created, we then have a series of commands we can run. Elena, who wrote this script code, has very nicely put the actual command for each function to run into the command line there, as well as what it does. And the first thing we're going to do is the pgvector is an extension for Postgres. Some Postgres services come with it built in. Some you have to install it yourself. Aiven services come with it built in already, but you do have to enable it. So rather than having to start up an SQL interface to Postgres and so on, we're going to just talk to it programmatically, and we're going to run the create extension vector SQL command, which is what we need to set pgvector enabled. So let me bring back my terminal. Let's bring that prompt up to the top, which I apologize if I forget later on. And we're just going to run that command. And that should come back with an empty array because Postgres always assumes you're doing a select and you get no answer back if it's succeeded for a create extension. So the next thing we want to do is to create the table that we're going to store our data in. So that's what this function is doing. So we've got create table movie plots, and we're going to store all the data from the JSON for each movie. So we've got the title, the director, cast, which we have to put in quotes because, of course, cast is an SQL reserved word, genre, plot, year, and I'm not sure what wiki got.
I think it's linked because it's like a link to original article.
Okay, link back to the original article. And then the most interesting thing is this embedding. Embedding is the data type that pgvector creates, which is the embedding allows you to have an array of 512 that is an embedding. And on embeddings, you can do the operations that let you find the nearest compare embeddings that let you do the actual calculations that you want to do. So it's not just an array, it's something cleverer than a plain array. So we're going to create that table. And again, it's very convenient to do that programmatically. And again, we get nothing back as an answer, which means it's succeeded. And again, if I wait for a moment, has everyone caught up with me?
Yeah, I think it also tips you are not going too fast, so I believe. But again, please
like many of us, I have a bad habit of getting enthusiastic and speeding up when I'm doing something interesting. So next, we're going to look at the process all movies file, which strangely enough does what it says. So that's doing the same things. It's pulling in the .env from the file system. It's getting in TensorFlow this time and creating an encoder from the TensorFlow model's universal sentence encoder. Sorry, that's a bit. We're also getting in pgpromise, which we'll talk about in a moment. Now, we're then pulling in the movieplots.json. We have the same configuration reading that we had before. We make a connection to our database using pgpromise this time. And what pgpromise does is it gives you a lot of the convenience functions that you want when you're talking to a database. And one of them, if we were going to send every movie in that file to Postgres as one record at a time, it would take a very long time because there'll be a transaction route around every every update, it would take forever. PG Promise gives a very nice little ability to create batches of that. The size of the batch, I've lost where we set that. Oh yeah, okay.
You
So
define it, it's there. Yeah.
encoder.load, right? So we've with some experimentation, this was done on GitPod, but the exact same thing applies here on CodeSpaces because those are using VS Code. A batch size of 150 seems to be about the right size to work. We could maybe go a bit bigger if we were willing to use a bigger service on CodeSpaces. We could doubtfully go even bigger, but 150 means that we're going to take about 10 or 12, 15 minutes to read everything in chunks of 150. So this is then just doing the putting stuff into those batches and then saying store in PG each of those batches, and it's looping until it's finished, and it will output a nice little log message to tell us as it's going. So we will now run that. It loads TensorFlow again, which takes a moment. And then I always get these couple of warnings where it's saying, well, you might be using more than 10% of your free system memory. And that's just warning us, I believe, because, well, you probably don't want to use too much memory. And it's saying if you've started 10% now, maybe you're going to go up. But these warnings I've never seen these warnings come back again. So this is just the initial processing. It's saying, you're being a little bit busy here. Do you know what you're doing? So this is then going in steps of 150. And it's warning us that the total amount is 34,886. So this is going to take a little while to run.
Yeah, I think actually recently I tried it. I was doing something experimenting on my machine. I needed also like to load data, and I noticed that actually like, and I remember like on locally my local machine is actually more powerful than GitPod or here. I think CodeSpace is it because they have a bit less power. But again, probably I have a MacBook, so those are pretty powerful by
Yes,
nature.
I think our work machines are quite powerful. I know that with GitPod you can choose a more powerful machine, and they'll maybe charge you a
Yeah,
bit more of
if
not very
you're
much.
busy.
And I believe the same is true of GitHub, but this seems to be powerful enough for most purposes. Excuse me. And the way we're going to solve this is by saying, well, we've been talking to you now for sort of, oh gosh, 40 minutes or something. So what we propose, sorry, wrong one. Go back to the slides. We propose to let you have a coffee break. So if we say we should come back in 10 minutes time, so
Let's do that. Yes.
in my time zone, I make it sort of 17, 18 minutes too. So if we say 10 minutes now from now.
Yeah, so it will be like whatever time zone you have. Again, I know that some time zones are more complicated. For me, it's right now 42, so let's meet in 55 minutes. Like
At 5 to.
five to the next hour.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically 10 minutes plus a little bit, and we'll wait for you.
Great.
I'm going to drink some water,
And
and
I'll
see
get
you in a
also
bit.
another tea.
Yes.
Mhm. I'm back as well.
I think we've got another moment before we're expecting everyone to be back with
Yes.
us. But yeah,
Tips, what are you drinking? Do you have any like...
it's just water, I'm afraid. That's
Oh no,
not
why
very.
I'm afraid? It's
It's
actually
a
the
good
best
thing.
problem, to be honest, and I really enjoy it.
Unfortunately, coffee doesn't act as a stimulant for me, so there's no point in drinking tea or coffee through this. And
Doesn't really affect you at all. Like you don't feel
no,
more
no,
like...
I drink coffee before bedtime. That's to relax.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow. Oh my God. That's super
I'm,
interesting. Is it like some like genes affect
I'm,
maybe
I'm
like...
told, I'm told it's a common thing with ADHD. So that's
Mm.
okay. I mean, it's. I've always thought it was a bit weird that it doesn't stop me enjoying coffee, and it does
Oh
mean
no,
that
I
maybe
think it's great.
maybe a
It's
better
kind of
stimulant
you can have coffee
is
all
not
the
that all of
time.
it. But, so no, it's does mean I can eat a lot of chocolate covered coffee beans in one go without being worried. So there
Exactly.
are
And also in
advantages.
the evening. I have a strict rule. I try not to drink any coffee after 12 during the day, but also ideally
Mhm.
after 10 because it affects me sadly.
Yeah.
But I do love coffee. I love coffee in all the states, and everything which smells like coffee is like... I have any like
Ah,
shower
yes.
gel smells of coffee which I have. So like I have more coffee.
I love that idea. Yes. No, I like coffee. I like tea. But they're both just hot drinks, um, which is cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I usually take extra coffee before like talks or conferences or workshops. If I have to lead, I'm like, I need to be ready. I need to
yeah, I
have like...
miss that. I miss the. I would love the ability to say, "Oh, because I'm feeling tired, I will have some coffee to wake me up." And I go, "Yeah, it's a hot drink, so it does a bit." But, and I suspect that anything that would actually wake me up would be not good for me. So let's not consider that.
And I think it's actually a bit of an illusion of coffee waking up. It kind of like suppresses the
Mm,
hormones of sleepiness, but it doesn't really... I mean, I think it can be...
yeah.
it is very possible to be very tired, but not able to sleep because you're on like a caffeine, and it's kind of
Yes.
frustrating.
Yes.
So
It doesn't actually clear the symptoms. Or sorry, mask the symptoms, not the cause. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which is not what you want.
We still need to sleep. So yeah.
Right. Shall we? Are we ready to go
Yeah,
again?
I'm curious, like how many items are processed, and did it finish
Oh,
or
that's
still...
true. I'm on the wrong page to see, aren't I? Oh, mine's still going.
Ooh, we still have 3,000 left.
So I'm
Okay.
being slow today. I'd be very interested to know if anyone else has got further or so this does actually
Yes.
vary quite a bit from time to time. When I was running this yesterday, it was very quick. I have no idea why, and it took less than 10 minutes to do the whole lot.
I have
And
an
I,
impression
yeah,
that they use the power, like the power is divided among all the
yeah,
probably free tier accounts here of the like locally probably... I mean, it will be done already by far, but here we are using the convenience of having the same place so that we can
mm,
run stuff, and anyone can run it even on Windows or something, but at the same time, of course, we are using the power of those machines
yeah,
provided, and
we're getting
that
that.
can be like a busy time. Yeah. I don't remember. I think actually like it last time also took us some time.
I'm sure
Uh,
if we spent a week coding, we could make a responsive system that would monitor how fast it's going and tune the batch size or something.
I also think like if we are doing, I don't know, last time we were doing workshop, it was early in the morning. And I think maybe
That's
that's
true.
like was a bit faster, but right now maybe like a bit more like working hours there in London because it's still end of the day,
That's
right?
true. Yes, it could be. People are doing their end of day projects and things. It's. I think it's a black art trying to understand these things.
Oh,
Yeah.
we have a message from
Yeah.
Gaurav. I hope I pronounced it correctly. That his flow is doing the same kind of
Okay. Yeah.
look. So we are still on the same
So
page.
the reason we had the 10-minute break is that's been our experience in the past that was enough time to get it through, but it's obviously a guess at best. So, excuse me.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, the way we've set it up, we have to wait for this to finish before we go on to the next thing. I could start another terminal, but I'm not going to get that complicated because that makes it too easy to make a mistake and end up killing this process
I
off.
think
And there's nothing like killing off the long-running process you're waiting for it to complete and having to start again. So
I think we are pretty close with this. So that's all good.
I definitely like this log message that tells me how well we're doing, though. It's much more reassuring having the so many out of a total.
It's actually interesting because like in Python I was playing and there was and like when I was doing something with that open search vector search, there is like a Python built-in library to make it this visualization of added. So I'm not a Python developer, so maybe that's why I'm like I'm impressed. Like there was like a nice visualization of this moving line increasing, not just like output line by line, but really like visualization.
Although those
Also,
are always run the risk of saying we're 90% and then spending the next 5 minutes at 90%. So mine is finished. I say ours.
we also have a message from Priyank, and he's still running, and he's about 1,000 to go. So maybe we can give it just a couple of minutes.
That's
So that
very useful to know. There's no point in carrying on until anyone else who's playing along has actually got to the finish. So we're not hurting anyone by waiting, and it's much the simplest thing to do. If we started to carry on and you aren't ready yet, then there's no fun in that. Oh, my code space. I was noticing at the bottom, the code spaces are given these little names out of the dictionary. Literate yodel. I can't remember what mine was called yesterday, but it was something I went, oh my goodness, that's really accurate. It described me perfectly, and I can't think what it was.
I like those. I like, for example, like sometimes I was creating today a GitHub repository, and it's just like different names, like for those, and those like a bit ridiculous. But I'm like, I should probably name like that GitHub repository because it's like super funny. Or you know, like in Google Docs, if you are sharing and some people join from outside, you images of animal and also like I don't know, like some kind of information. It's like super funny as well.
Yes, I like the kinds of password generators that give you sort of half a dozen phrases. Oh, good.
So
Right,
Priyanka is done. So then Gaurav, let us know if you're also done or if we should wait for you. So then, and anyone else who is following us.
We should say that we really appreciate it when people engage in chat because it's very hard standing here not able to see people. Wonderful. And if you're in a room, you can sort of talk at people and go and see what they're doing. Right. So are we ready to carry on? Right. Then. So I'm now going to. Wait a second. So that's finished. So I'm going to clear my terminal. Now we've done part 1 core. So we've been in that directory. For part 2, we're going to create a new directory for actually doing the full stack app. So what we want to do is to go up 1 level back into the main project. Create a
wait a second. Tips, you forgot one thing.
I forgot step 4, didn't I? I forgot to choose to show that we've actually done something. Thank you. This is why there are 2 of us. So the important step, we've read all this stuff in. Let's check that we can actually do something with it. So if we go back to our file viewer, let's get rid of the terminal again, and open search for nearest vectors. I should know by alphabet by now. Then the beginning of this should be very familiar. We're loading our various things and we're reading in the configuration. And then we've got a very simple, I should learn not to say very simple. We have a short function which takes a test phrase, and the test phrase it's using is a lot of cute puppies, and it creates an embedding for that test phrase. And then it goes to the database and it says, select me all the values from movie plots from our table and order them by the embeddings. So embedding is the column we've been populating in the table that are nearest to, that's this little funny character here, the test phrase, the vector the embedding we just created for that test phrase. And we have to turn it into the right sort of string that will be understood by the database, and give me back the first 5 answers. So if we run this,
By the way, if I can add there, like
Mm.
this kind of funny character, which this like the between the embedding and the start of the test phrase. So this is actually indicates that we want to find it by L2 distance. So there are different ways how you can calculate the distances between two objects, or like two vectors actually. And L2 distance is mostly, you can imagine, is like direct line. There is actually like L1 distance, which also is used by some vector searches approaches, but it's like Manhattan thing, because in New York you can kind of like, you have the streets where you always have to make angle to come somewhere, so you kind of go like you take a bit longer approach, the direct line. And there is also like cosinus, which is I'm not sure how it's pronounced in English. Cosinus, like this mathematical function, which is
Cosine.
very cosine. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because like my native Russian pronunciation of stuff is really bad. So that one is actually like, is also very, very popular. But yeah, so this is like probably the easiest, and also like probably quite fast to calculate L2 distance.
And this is where I defer to Elena, because my studying of maths was a very, very, very long time ago. And I remember what a cosine is, in that it's this thing you can do with angles. But I was disturbed several decades ago to discover I'd forgotten how to use them. So I just know that this is the operator I probably want.
Yeah.
We do have articles on our developer center, which we'll give you a link to later, that explains some of this sort of stuff in more detail if you want to find out more. And also, if you look up pgvector itself, it explains a bit more. So we're going to run that function and search for for the first 5 movies that are nearest to a lot of cute puppies. And what that's going to give us back, it has to do its loading TensorFlow again, is it's going to give us back the entire data record out of the database for each of those. So it ends with the embedding. It's got the wiki, which we were talking about earlier, which, as Elena said, is the link. And then it's got here the description. And so the last one it found was called Puppy Tail. So that sounds like a good bet. And if we scroll back further, we may run out of scroll distance. But the 4th one it found was Yolki 3, which is appears to be about dogs and breeding dogs, and therefore probably puppies. So I think we've got some inclination, I'm not going to try and scroll back to the beginning, that this is already finding us things that are related in the way that we want. But of course, the user interface is awful because we're having to scroll back through these. On the other hand, we could see how we could change this to be a command line program that grabbed just the title and other information out of that data structure and presented it in a much more friendly fashion, and let us set the test phrase as an argument. But that's not really the way we want to interact with this at the command line. We much would rather have a nice web app, which is much easier to use and will present the information in an easier to see fashion. So going back to where I was earlier, when I realized, when Elena noticed I'd left out a whole important step, which proved that we'd actually loaded the data. Thank you, Guarev, who's having to leave. We're going to go up one directory level, create a part 2 full stack directory, and then cd into it. And the easiest way to do that is to do it at the command line. So we'll copy that command. And we're now in part 2 full stack, which is where we're going to work from now onwards. We need to install the Next.js app, which is what we're going to use to actually do our app development, our web app development. So again, I'll copy that. Now, this is going to ask us some questions. And if we look over at the README, we've got the answers that we want people to give. Mostly these are the defaults, except the name and and I think it's the whether we want to use app router, we'll need to be careful about. So do take care answering these, but we want to call the app movie recommender.
Oh, there is actually asks you if it's okay.
Oh, sorry. I have to say yes to proceed. Thank you, Elena. It would have got very confused at me. I don't know if it would have taken movie recommender as a yes or a no. Movie
It's kind of like when you ask someone a question, it's like, do you like tea or coffee? And they answer yes. It's like, but doesn't really answer.
So we're going to call our project Movie Recommender. Would we like to use TypeScript? Yes. TypeScript is a wonderful idea, actually. I was most impressed when that first came out. Would you like to use ESLint? No. We're not doing anything where, I believe that's just a linter that will check that our syntax is correct, and we're not doing anything where that will benefit us in this context. Do we want to use Tailwind CSS? Yes, which is the default there. That's just making it easier for us to describe our pages as I understand it. Would you like to use the source directory? The answer is no. The default there is no, and that's perfectly okay. And this one. So would we like to use AppRouter? We want to choose no. So I've just used the left arrow to go to the no option there. The default is yes. I know that when we've tried doing this code in the past, we had some problems with interactions between the AppRouter and the TensorFlow libraries. And AppRouter is a very nice idea, but relatively new. It's easier for us to not use that. If you answer yes by accident here, our code won't work with AppRouter. So please make sure that you answer no here. Over time, we'll reinvestigate this and see if we can use it in the future, because it does seem to be the way that people are going. Otherwise, the answer wouldn't default to yes here. So please choose no for AppRouter. And would you like to customize the default import alias? No is an acceptable answer here. And that downloads lots of stuff for us and should set things up. And we wait while that finishes. Right, so that's finished. As it says, you can find out more by going to Next.js.org. Now, if we sit up here, we should have created, therefore, we had here part 1 core. We've now got part 2 full stack, which wasn't there before. And in part 2 full stack, you actually can't quite see, but what it's done is it said, it's put these on one line. Because part 2 full stack is empty except for the movie recommended directory, it's put them on one line, which is very useful and I find incredibly confusing. There's probably a configuration option somewhere to stop it doing that, but it does mean we need to be careful, because when we drag and drop stuff onto part 2 full stack, when we meant to drag and drop it onto movie recommender, life will get confusing. So I'm going to make that a little bit smaller again. But that's a thing that I have fallen over in the past. So the very first thing we're going to do is move inside that movie recommender directory, because that's where our application is going to be. Now we can immediately, inside that directory, we've actually got an application already set up, so we can run it. It's not going to do anything terribly interesting, but what it does is it lets us open in browser, and that will open me this new tab, and it will load stuff, and we get this page. And this is the Next.js page that reassures us that we've actually got an application running. And if we look down to the left here, if we go to that same URL and go to the right-hand end of it and put /app/API, sorry, I can't type, API/hello in there, that will give us back this bit of JSON. Let's make that a bit bigger. It says name John Doe. And so that's put there as a hello application to just check that your the application is working as we expect. So that's a root. So as before, so let's go back to the editor. As before, we need to install all the dependencies that we need. So I'm going to copy this and Control-C the application I'm running to stop it. So I just typed Control-C there, and then I can paste in the npm install command. So we're installing the TensorFlow model as before, the universal sentence encoder. We're installing TFJS node as before. we're installing .env as well. So if I hit return, now we found that the ordering of this is a little bit sensitive, and the same was true with the packages JSON as well, I believe, that sometimes the order in which we install things matters. It's hopefully as the packages get more mature, NPM will get better at sorting out all the interdependencies. It's just that the whole field of machine learning in JavaScript is still not quite as finished as it is in programming languages like Python, which have been doing this with a lot more people involved with them. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it in JavaScript. It just means that sometimes you'll have a little bit more of a hiccup to go over, and you don't have quite as many packages available in JavaScript as you do in languages like Python. So that's installed. We should be okay there. Now, again, we're going to need to talk to Postgres. So we need the same environment variables and the same certificates as before. Luckily, we can just copy them from where we had them before, and we've got the commands to copy them here. So we're just using the Linux cp command to copy the .env file, which is identical, and the certificates file, which is identical. So if we now look over here at what we've got our ca.pem, and we've got, oh, sorry, that's part 1.core. We've got our, in part 2, full stack movie recommender. We've got our .env, and we've got our ca.pem. So we're all good to go there. Now, in order to create an API route to actually do our recommendation handling, we need to create a new file called pages/api/recommendations.ts. So back over here in the pages directory, there's an API directory, and I want to create a new file in here. And you can see it coming just above the hello.ts, which did that API/hello we did earlier that gave us back the JSON. We can create, what's it? I've forgotten the name already. Recommendations.ts. Let me just do that again. So we create a file called recommendations.ts. That opens that for us. Now, luckily for you, we've pre-made all of the code you need. So first we copy in the code for the dependencies. If I'm very lucky, paste works there. So this is code you should recognize by now. This is the same code that we've had earlier on to pull in all the dependencies. We can then pull in the config connection stuff that we used earlier. So again, that's identical to what we had before. Let's make the terminal window a bit smaller. So we can see that we've got the pulling in the environment variables just as we did before. And then we need to pull in the code that actually does the work. So let's pull this in, and then we'll go through what it does. I'm old school. I come from a time when you needed a line break at the end of a file to make the file work. So I apologize to anyone who doesn't like that. All right, so we've got a global PG client variable. We don't want to load the Postgres client every request that we make to the web browser. We want to load it once and have it there available in the background because that takes a little time to load. So this basically says when you try and use the global Postgres client variable, if it's already got a value, then use it. If not, then you'll get back a null. Similarly, we want to do the same sort of thing for the model. I explained that very badly. We'll see in a moment how that works. We only want to create it once, and otherwise we want to use it again and again. So this is the function to get the Postgres client if it already exists, and otherwise create a new one. So then we've got a handler function, and this is the core of our web application. So the handler function takes a request from the user, from the web application, and returns an API response, which will contain a movie, whatever that will be. We'll get to that in a moment. And what it does is it gets our model. It, in this case, has a fixed thing it's going to look up. It's going to look up the string cat, create an embedding for the string cat. So we're only going to do this query. We're going to ignore whatever query the user is asking for. We're going to get our Postgres client again. It will lazy load that. And then we're going to make the query we've seen before, which says select everything from movie plots, order it by the nearest embedding to our query and give us back the first 5, just as we saw before. And it's going to return that in our response, those 5 rows. I say it's fixed, so it's going to use cat. Now, before we can actually make that work, we said we were using this movie type, so we need to create the movie type. So back over here, we need to add a movie type. So at the top level, so that's in movie recommender. This is where you need to be careful about where you are. We're going to create a new file called movie. I've forgotten. 1 second, I can see it over here.
It is movie.d.
Movies. Is it movies.t?
Just a
D.ts.
single movie without s.
Movie.d.ts.
Exactly. This is a type. Or type.
So I've carefully hidden it from myself over here. And then we copy this into there. This is just defining what a movie looks like. So it's got all the fields we'd expect, ending with the embedding, which is an array of numbers. And we're exporting it. And then back in the recommendations.ts, which is here, we need to tell it to use that. So at the top here, just after all the other imports, I'm going to copy across this import. For some reason, it doesn't yet know about movie.d.ts. I suspect it's just that it takes a little while for it to realize it's there. But one day I will look up and find out why. Don't worry about this thing warning you it's not there. We've just created it. It's definitely there. So if we run our application again, anyway, let me bring that up a little way. If we run our application again, I'm just up arrowing up to where I did npm run dev. So if I npm done run dev again, that will run our application again. Again, open in browser. So here's that same thing, but if we add /API/recommendations here, and I'm not going to try and type recommendations, I'm going to try and copy that. So I go to the end and paste that in there. Then here we get a JSON structure back, which has title Garfield the movie. That was the first thing it found, and all the information about Garfield the movie, including that very long vector. And then the next movie. And then if we go down to the end, we should see the ones we found earlier. I don't know if you remember, but I'm not sure I remember, which was the house. Was that the one we found earlier?
I don't remember because actually I never.
I'm not sure that's the same order.
Because last time we were looking in.
Oh no, we're looking for cat now. We were looking for puppies earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is funny cat. So, yeah. So we've got back the answers.
The overlapping one was always like the secret life of pets, because like pets include cats and dogs, and that is.
It's got cats and dogs. Yes.
You're searching.
So this thinks the first choice for a movie about cats should be Garfield the movie, and I have opinions. If you've ever seen Garfield the movie, you may have opinions too.
I actually never. I don't think I ever saw this. I mean, like I know the name, I know the movie, and I think I'm not really a big movie person. So
it has Bill Murray in it, apart from that, which is a good thing, by the way. So that proves that we have our app is working, it's doing stuff, but it's not very pretty. You would not want to use that as a user interface. I do not recommend returning large chunks of JSON as a friendly thing for any human being. So we need to go to the pages/index.tsx file, which is the file that actually has how to show. So we don't want the API, we want index.ts. This is the file that tells us how to display the result. So we're going to throw away all this content because that didn't give us anything very pretty. So I'm going to select all of that and delete it. And I'm going to copy this content here. And once I've got it, I'll attempt to explain what it's doing. So the very end of it, which I'm going to ignore moderately hard, is the actual description of what it should look like. What we've got here is, again, we're pulling in our movie structure, and we've got a function called home, which is describing how to draw the page. We are setting up movie. We're setting up a state using movie, which is as a function set movie plots to set it up. We've got our search input. We've got a function called search, and that function called search, when we go to API recommendations, that will post whatever search was entered in it, and then it will look for the response from that that post. We'll get back a response, and it will set movie plots to the data from that, and that will set up a movie structure for us and return this stuff. Now, at the moment, if we go, I believe if we go and refresh this, am I correct, Elena?
I think you need to go to the landing page. Right now you are in the API, in the programmatic
Oh,
stuff.
you're true. Yes, you're right.
Remove the last, so like if it's you go to the
That's
landing
true, yeah.
page.
This is where I am not very good at explaining what the code does.
Yeah. Before it was a beautiful layout done by the Next.js.
So now we've got, so the reason we're getting these stripes is because I'm using a white background where it's assuming dark mode. So this is my problem. Actually, that will go away as soon as we do a query. Of course, if I type in, is that a puppy or a P or a B? It's not really very great, but it's better than it was. And I select search. I get back Garfield's movie, which I
intentionally very.
The reason for that is because, of course, we had the hard-coded cats query still in there. So although we've got a much better page, this is a bit better. We still haven't got an actual query that's doing the real job. So back in recommendations.ts, we need to use the result of the search that this was returning. So this was getting back the search and then returning it to us. So if we go back to recommendations.ts, if you remember in our handler function, we have a hard code embedded cat here. So we've got an API request coming in, but we're ignoring that and looking at cat. So instead we want this line. I'm going to put, because I'm a cautious person, I'm going to put the new line in, which the only difference is it's using request body search. So it's using the search string from the request body. And then I can take this line out. If I can actually highlight all the line, I can take that line out. And now, if I refresh here, is that going to work? Or have I not done enough refreshing?
I think you did enough refreshing. I think it just takes a bit of time. It's still for the first load when we also it should be.
This is where I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. Do I need to kill it and then start it again, Elena?
Let's do it.
Oh, here we go. It's just catching up with me. No, it's just catching up with me. It's only just compiling the changes I made.
Okay.
What has happened there? I know what was wrong. Because I broke the code while I was editing, it compiled the broken code, got upset by that, gave me error messages, and then it took a little while to catch up with me. So I think I've broken it.
So that's what you see happens. You need to refresh probably this again. This is what happens when you are too cautiously done stuff. When you just destroy the things, replace it without any thought, then you have less errors.
So I'm ambivalent about whether it's a good idea to have the process running in the background and keeping up with what you're typing, because that will go wrong in this way. But the opposite is then you have to keep stopping and starting the server, which you forget to do as well. But now if I search for puppy dogs, then it finds The Secret Life of Pets, which is about a Jack Russell Terrier. It's much more likely to be about puppy dogs. So now we've got the whole thing plumbed in. It's still, and if we scroll down, we'll find we've got A Dog's Purpose about a feral puppy. Well, that's definitely puppy dogs. Clifford's Really Big Movie is about, oh gosh, Clifford is a big, this is from children's television in the UK, either the UK or the US, I can't remember. I've seen some of these. It's a dog the size of a house. Cats and dogs, probably got puppies in it. So we're getting decent responses this time. It's not very pretty yet, however. And because we can control over this index.ts, we can create something prettier. I'm not going to claim to be able to do anything to do this properly, but what we have is a whole new sort of source code here. So again, if I come back to index.ts and select everything and delete it, and I instead put this context here and put that in, and then wait for it to compile. So it now says it's compiled. If I go back over here and refresh, assuming I haven't been too quick, so we've again got that strange striated effect, which is my that could be fixed if I knew what I was doing a bit better. We've got a much better search bar here, and if I type in puppy dogs now, I can hit return. I don't just have to wait. I don't just have to click on search, and it will come back with something that looks a lot nicer. I've got a little icon here. It's formatted a lot more in a much more friendly way, and we get a clear boundary between each movie. And if I type in, oh, I don't know, horses and riders, I have no idea what that's going. That sounds like it's probably to do with horses. So this is working. If anyone has anything else they want me to look up, well, you can do it yourself.
No, it seems to be working. That's amazing.
Yeah. I've now forgotten the name of the. Oh, I'm amused that the first search for groundhogs is Care Bears. I was hoping for Groundhog Day, but maybe this is an old enough movie database that Groundhog Day isn't in there. So this appears to be working. It now looks a lot better. That very first unfulfilled search being a bit striated on the white mode, a bit light mode. If I was in dark mode, that wouldn't have happened. So there's something strange in the CSS that could be fixed there. But basically, we've got a proper application that's doing the right thing. And as if you noticed, subsequent queries, the queries after the first one, were all a lot quicker.
You can search for something, oh yeah, focus or coffee or something.
Yeah. Oh, coffee's a good one. After our discussion earlier.
Yogurt like
some of those solutions there. So so this is working, and the point about the caching of the Postgres and the machine learning interface, that means that the first query had to load them all, but then all subsequent queries were benefiting from the fact everything was already loaded, and that's quite an important thing as well. So that's the end of the workshop. Let me go back to the slides. If you want to be very clean and tidy, then you can tidy up after yourself. If we go back to the GitHub repository.
Yeah, because if you don't clean up, then actually like the credits for the code repository.
Also, there's two cleanings up to do. If I go back to the actual repository, then if I choose code, I go to code spaces, and I can see that literate yodel, if you remember, is the name of my code space, and I can choose to delete it if I wish. I'm going to delete that because if everyone's happy with me not using it anymore. Actually, I'll delete it later just in case. Similarly, if I go across to Aiven, it's a good idea to tidy up after yourself with your Postgres. If we choose the lovingly concealed 3 dots here, which are done to make sure you don't accidentally end up deleting things, I can power off or I can delete my service. If I power off my service, it shuts down the node, it makes the node go to sleep, but it doesn't delete the service, which means I can come back later and power it on again. And because it's a database, all the data will still be there. If it was a Kafka, for instance, where it's streaming data, the data would go away, but the service was. If I delete the service, it will go away entirely. I won't have that service anymore. That means that I'll have deleted my free service. I can recreate a new free service. I'm going to delete it. It asks me to type the name of the service to prove I really mean that, and luckily it lets me copy and paste it. So I'm going to delete it. That'll take a moment to delete, but it's gone. And similarly, if I now go back over to this thing, I'm now going to delete my code space to tidy up. and that's now gone. If I did something over here, I'm sure it would get upset at me, so I'm just going to delete that, and that obviously won't work anymore. Go back to the slides. It's often easy to forget that tidying up after yourself is good. If you were using one of the paid services, you do want to remember to power off services you're not using. So, because for instance, if it's the weekend and you're not playing with it at the weekend, or if you only use it at the weekends, those days when you're not using it are still using up resources. If you enjoyed this, we have various links for you. We have our own forums that you can go to and discuss anything to do with Aiven or anything that, related to the services that we provide, or general questions around that. That's the first link. Elena, have you got those to post in the chat? You have that look of someone looking for. Yeah. We'll give you the feed link again in a moment with a QR code. The Developer Center has a lot of articles that are tutorials and other information as well that are a bit more in depth than our ordinary documentation. We have a newsletter that comes out periodically. If you didn't sign up for it when you created your account, you can sign up for that by following the link. And there's always more workshops coming. If you follow that link, you'll find the link to the next workshops. We're aiming to a cadence of about 2 workshops a month in general. And the next couple of workshops will be, again, a 2-hour workshop on Kafka and Python, and doing interesting things with streaming data, and a little bit, we hope, of stuff of combining streaming data using Flink to amend the data as it's passing. So we do really appreciate feedback. It's very useful to get an idea of what people think about what we've been doing, and that's the link again to the feedback.
Yeah, and we do appreciate like a positive, negative. Yeah. Really helps us improve because sometimes we can think that something is easy or difficult, and you have different opinion. Like, share with us. Really helps to make better workshops for the future.
Yeah, and this is always a learning experience for us. So that's us done. We hope that was interesting and useful. Obviously, you will be able to watch this again on YouTube if you wish. And as I said earlier, the repository is there and will be kept up to date with how to actually do this by yourself if you wish. I think I'm looking sideways at the picture of Elena. I can see to the side. That's why I'm looking over there. So I think we're finished. And
I think we are.
We're a little bit we're somewhat under time. I've talked much faster than. Have I forgotten stuff? I don't know. But we've covered everything.
No,
I
think you didn't forget. I think everything just went smoothly. And thank you so much to Priyank and to Gaurav and to others who joined this workshop. And we hope to see you in the future for other workshops. Also, like in the feedback section or something, or just anywhere, like, please tell us what kind of workshops you want to see. Okay, a good suggestions from Priyank to add steps. We will do that in the GitHub repository. We will change that.
It's it's so easy to forget, and as you say, it's so very useful to have.
Yeah, and it sucks to forget because then kind of you are losing free credits for those services. Yeah, but and if you have some ideas for workshops, what you want to learn, kind of like, then share with us, and we will see if we can make it happen. Cool. Then thank you, everyone, and see you next time.